Yahweh Part 6, 9/11 Modern Crusade. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I hope you were listening to the first speaker this morning about this gematria. Pastor called it gematria. Here's a quote from the Mark of the Beast, Volume 1, verse 131 and 32. It says, Yahweh's number is 13, but man's number is 6. To find the gematria to man, we must add the number 6 to each successive letter of the alphabet. A equals 6, B equals 12, C is 18, D is 24, E is 30, etc. Just keep adding 6. 132, it says, it's interesting to note the Babylonians use the number 6 as the base to their numbering system, the Babylonians. And remember, New York, and he shows the word New York here to show how he comes up with 666. And you see the letters are each, you just add 6 to each letter, and you get these numbers. And it comes out to 666. Well, wouldn't you know, when you put pastor's statement in there, you get 9/11 palindrome, forward and backward. Now, why is that? Why is 9/11 so important attached to New York? Because I told you the sons of Yahweh and Satan have it planned to destroy mankind. Okay? And you're going to see as we walk through this, her deceptive scheme she's got going here. Let's go to the next slide. I want to show you that September 11th or 9/11 is associated with New York from its inception. Manhattan Island was discovered on 9/11, 1609, by Henry Hudson. Okay? And 1609, it's very interesting. I put in what they put here in Wikipedia. It says, on September 11th, 1609, Henry Hudson discovered Manhattan Island and the indigenous people living there. Hudson was an English sea explorer and navigator during the early 17th century, best known for his explorations of present-day Canada and parts of the northeastern United States. And that came out to 1609. Why is that so important? It's the word Gatum. It means a burnt valley. But when you go to Brown, Driver, and Briggs, it gives you a little more. It's the word Gotham. You remember that word Gotham? Gotham City? In Batman and all these places, they call it Gotham. That's the original Gotham right there, from the beginning. Okay? Right there. There's your proof. And then when you put in Henry Hudson, the discovery of Manhattan Island on September 11th, 1609, you get 9/11. Okay? So you see 9/11 from its inception. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about war. Here's some of the headlines the day after 9/11. It's war, evil acts, Bush vows revenge for attacks. Rocky Mountain News shows our nation saw evil. That word war, the etymology of the word war, it means to confuse, perplex, to confuse, mix up, to bring into confusion. Okay, remember Babylon, okay? Babylon means confusion. Let's go to the next slide. This is from the 13th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 8, verse 62. Whew. Pastor says, now look on over to verse 18. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. She's the one who pulls the strings of the bow that brings forth the sword to conquer. You see how plain that is once you understand it? And it's taking place right in front of our eyes right now. Pull the strings to conquer. Conquer with the sword. Put that in, you get the number 3441, which is that word Jesuits again. And remember, when you mirror it, when you do it backwards, you get 1443 Masons. And when you put mirror and those two numbers in your gematria, you get 9/11. Okay, and it says, I put in, is taking place right in front of our eyes right now, pulls the strings to conquer, conquer with the sword. And you notice, go ahead and flip that number down there on the left. You'll notice you get 9/11, okay? And then 7283 means to conspire, to plot, to tumult and rage, okay? Should be thinking about, I believe, one of the prophets talking about these nations that are enraged and raging. Let's go to the next slide. Let's see if all that's a coincidence. This is the 15th book of Israel, chapter 19, verse 59. Pastor says, if you'll just read Revelation 6, you'll see the first to take peace from the earth. It's going to grow from there. Hurt not the oil and the wine, though, but go out and conquer. Conquer, conquer. Those are the orders given to the quartet. And the quartet is being guided by the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church is being guided by Satan. That's what your scriptures show. That's not my own thoughts. That's what your scriptures actually say. It's being guided by Satan with their hopes of destroying mankind, the earth, and the heavens that actually govern the earth. Go ahead and flip that number that we get with that quote there, if you'll just read Revelation 6 and through that quote. What? The date? 9/11/01? Really? Huh. Okay. And then when you put in the quartet is being guided by the Catholic Church and the Catholic Church is being guided by Satan, you get the number 823, which is alluding to Daniel 8:23, which is talking about this king of fierce expression who understands dark sentences and dark secrets and sinister schemes. You remember all that? Notice the picture right above. You see the pyramid at the top with two pillars supporting it, and it's called the Adoration of the Trinity. Notice how all these Jesuits, and this is in the Church of the Gisu, the Jesuit church, they're adoring the Trinity God. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you know what a Masonic tracing board is, if you don't, you will know. Don't worry about what it means. Just look at the symbols there. But notice the two pillars. These two pillars represent, they say, the two pillars that were in the temple. They call them Jachin and Boaz, that were at the entrance or on the porch of Solomon's temple. What these really are is the Twin Towers. Okay, now these were laid out, the Twin Towers were laid out in a plan. Remember, they're being guided by Satan, right? And sometimes you'll see a third pillar, and we'll show that in a minute, in the center there, and we'll show what that means. But it's about initiation into the mystery religion, into mystery rites. Now, the two pillars on the Freemason tracing board comes out to 2802, which means to devise, secretly conceal, to fabricate. And then 2420 is the word used in Daniel 8:23, dark sentence, dark sayings, dark speech, like riddles that no one can understand unless the house of Yahweh explains it to them. Because the Masons aren't going to tell you what this means. They're going to give you all kinds of misinformation. Okay, but that is the Twin Towers sitting there, and it means to propound a riddle. Let's go to the next slide. We'll prove it. Put in Freemasonic tracing board, the North Tower, the South Tower, the Solomon Brothers buildings. Those are the three buildings that fell down, collapsed in 9/11. Free fall. Solomon Brothers, Solomon's temple? It's spelled a little different, but they say that third pillar, the Masons claim that third pillar in the center there is you, if you're a Mason. It means you're becoming a god, becoming to perfection. And you'll notice the ladder by the pillar leading up to heaven, okay? It's about becoming a god. So you put in Freemasonic tracing board, North Tower, South Tower, Solomon Brothers building, you get 911. The second number means Chaldeans, which is 5466, and the third number is 5018, and it means Nebuzaradan. Well, who is he? Notice, Jeremiah 52:12 has every one of these words. Nebuzaradan, the commander of the royal guard who served the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of Yahweh and the king's house. The Chaldean troops who were with the commander of the royal guard broke down all the walls surrounding Jerusalem. As for the bronze pillars that I told you about, those two pillars that were sitting on the porch that were in the house of Yahweh, the Chaldeans broke them up and carried all their bronze to Babylon. Now, concerning the two pillars, each was 4 fingers thick and each was hollow. These two pillars. Go to the next slide. This is from History.com, World Trade Center. It says, to fulfill the Port Authority's requirement, architect Minoru Yamasaki designed 2 towers of 110 stories each. Instead of the traditional stacked glass and steel box construction of many New York skyscrapers, Yamasaki worked with structural engineers to come up with a revolutionary design, a new design, 2 hollow tubes. Can you see how you can see through them? That was before they had any occupants in there. This picture was taken. So really, what you look inside those pillars, you see 2 columns, and then they're just flat floor space. They're laid out in a floor plan that's just a floor, a floor, a floor, a floor. Very easy to collapse for future need. Let's go to the next slide. So the World Trade Center, Building 7, the Solomon Brothers Building, 666. And then 3996, which means an entrance or an entrance into, because remember, you enter the two pillars. It goes back to Egypt. In there, you enter into this mystery religion to become a god, to go to heaven, you know, all their gobbledygook. And then the third number, 3821, watch this. It's the word Leb, L-E-B, and it means heart, myself, inner man, heart, conscience, imagination, pride, self-exaltation. That's about masonry, you know, man being a god. Wisdom, understanding, skillful men. From 3824, Lebab, L-E-B-A-B, which means inner man, mind, heart, will, bethink themselves, heart, moral character, because that's what they're building in the Mason, is moral character. But guess what Yahweh shows it is? Read those words backwards. Leb is Bel. That's the Babylonian god Baal. And Lebab backwards is Babel. You see, you Masons, you're being confused. You're being lied to by Satan to make you think that you can become a perfect man without the house of Yahweh. So I suggest you repent because they're misleading you. Now look at this third-degree Masonic tracing board to the left here. When you look through it, what do you see? The Tower of Babel, the same tower that you see when you look through the Arch of Washington there in New York. It's about becoming a god, becoming part of the Masons, becoming a part of the Nimrod system that's building a higher tower. We'll get to that more later. Let's go to the next slide. Pastor, in that one verse, he said, conquer, conquer. He said it twice, so I put that in, and it comes out to 186. It means strong. From 5813, Uzi. You know what an Uzi is, right? It's an Israeli weapon that they use in their wars. And it means forceful, impudent, strong, mighty, prevailed. Go ahead and flip that second number, 1116, and you'll see you'll get the 911. You can drop that fourth one. And 896 is the third number, and it means Babylé, which Babylonians, Babylonia, Babel, from 894, Babel, Babylon, confusion, gate of God, because Bab means gate and El means God. And then 896 in Greek is Baal. Well, what kind of strength are they talking about? It's not Yahweh's strength, it's the strength of God. Put in the word strength and you get 666. Okay, and then 430 is the word Elohim, God, gods, goddess, rulers, angels. Add 666 and 430, you get 1096, the year of the first Crusades. Right? That's not the first Crusades. The Crusades go back to Nimrod and before that with Cain, right? Let's go to the next slide. In the 10th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 1297, pastor says, this is the most evil mess you could ever see, the religions of this world. They have nothing to do with righteousness of Yahshua. Yahshua never went out conquering with a sword. He said those who live by the sword are going to die with the sword. Put in, they have nothing to do with the righteousness of Yahshua. Go ahead and flip that number 611, and you'll get 911. Right? Yahshua never went out conquering with a sword. He said those who live by the sword are going to die with the sword. Is 11901. Go ahead and that 11901 is actually the European dating of 9/11/2001. As you can see there with that movie trailer of that French movie, 11901. But go ahead and flip it because there's more to be revealed. Because it comes out to 1061. And if you remember 5 years ago, I gave a sermon about Wolf 1061, that exoplanet that was discovered 5 days after they signed the Paris Agreement and 2 days before Pastor gave a sermon about Yale College on 12/19. Wolf 1061 was referring to this wolf here, this Pope Alexander II, who preached the reconquering in 1063 as a Christian emergency, or 9/11. Crusade, killing the Moors and the Muslims. That's what it was about, was killing Muslims, 9/11. The Moors were the Muslim inhabitants of the Maghreb, the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, and Malta during the Middle Ages. The name was later also applied to the Arabs. Let's go to the next slide. Because I mentioned Yale University. Well, why did I do that? The great Yale University, 15th book of Israel, chapter 40, verse 20. The great Yale University, as a follower of the Vatican, has been told you're going to be the heroes in this. You're going to be the one to bring the nations to peace because you won't allow these other religions to worship. You won't allow freedom of speech or freedom of religion or even assembly. Yes, that comes forth straight from the Vatican, the divining serpent. So the Jesuit plot to destroy the First Amendment, that's what Pastor was talking about in that sermon, that all the students at Yale signed on to, yeah, we don't need the First Amendment. And Pastor said, who taught them that? The Catholic Church, because they took over Yale University, the Jesuits. Notice, Jesuit plot to destroy the First Amendment, the number of the sons of Yahweh, 3006, and also 2856, which means to curtail, to close up, to set a seal. You know how they like to seal things and stop things? And then it means to curtail in the Greek. And you add up those numbers, you get 6363, and it means Peter. Well, who's Peter? It's the Vatican, right? And now when you add up all those meanings, you get 2483, which is when the house of Yahweh was established. But let's go to the next slide so we can see why. Because when you put in the First Amendment exactly the way it's written, it comes out 2483. Because it was written for who? The house of Yahweh. Because this was made for us. And Pastor said the First Amendment protected freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. And notice the second number, 1060, is from 1061, and it means first fruits. But remember Wolf 1061? Who was he after? Who's this crusade all about? The house of Yahweh, right? But notice, when you put in that bottom one I just read, you get 4992, which means gift of Yahweh. 4992 in the Greek means to save and preserve, to ensure salvation. And then the third number, 3068, means Yahweh, showing this was from Yahweh for the house of Yahweh, this First Amendment. It's so important to us. Let's go to the next slide. In the Mark of the Beast, Volume 1, Chapter 9, verse 197, Pastor says, he also said the Catholic cardinal to the United States is the military vicar to the United States, meaning he has authority in all the Catholic chaplains, of all the Catholic chaplains. Carroll said the majority of West Point cadets are Catholics. Most of the top military leaders in the U.S. and the other Western nations are Catholic and would do what the Catholic Church commands. Notice, would do what the Catholic Church commands, 322. That's not Pastor. That's the Yale Skull and Bones. Military industrial complex that the Vatican runs, 322 as well. Could we show the clip?
The secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look for...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
And we'll be watching. Be safe on the campaign trail. John Kerry, thanks for joining us. And we'll be right back.
Okay, so both these Yale graduates, Kerry and Bush, were running against each other in 2004. Both Skull and Bones members. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at Pastor's next quote from the 15th book of Israel, chapter 40, verse 14. It says, now Yale University is where they train the soldiers to go out and take their positions in battle. They train them in religion so they can be chaplains and work in prisons or go out with the soldier boys and tell them, yeah, go ahead and kill these people. That's all right. You'll go to heaven anyway. You have a license to kill from God and Jesus. By this sword you will conquer. By war you will conquer. And Revelation 6, if you remember, says, now listen to me. It says he went out. He was given this authority to go out conquering and to conquer. Well, this is going on right now in that fourth part of the earth in and around the great river Euphrates. Put that quote in about Yale University there, and you get 3277, and it's the word Yale. You see that? Just switch the letters around, and it's actually pronounced that. Another number, 1966, is Lucifer, and wouldn't you know, John Kerry graduated in the class of 66 at Yale. Right there. And if you notice, Biden just recently appointed him to climate czar. Climate czar 666. Wow, what a coincidence. Let's go to the next slide. Now, right before 9/11 took place, there was a report put out. It was called Rebuilding America's Defenses by a group called Project for the New American Century, PNAC for short. And it was all about getting America, how are we going to become great? They're a think tank. And they were thinking, how are we going to rebuild the military into the greatest machine ever? How are we going to get all the oil to run it? And they came up with a plan right before 9/11. It came out in 2000. And it says, the process, here's a quote, process of transformation is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. In other words, we're going to need a new Pearl Harbor to get this ball rolling. Well, wouldn't you know, just a few months later, they got it. So when you put in that quote, you get 1169 Baal, second number 7014 Cain, and the third number 6315. If you just flip the U and drop the H, you get PNAC, the same people that wrote the report. Notice, a new Pearl Harbor, 942 means Bush. Bush. George Bush, class of 1968 of Yale, and neoconservatives, or the neocons, or what they called them, they were the ones that wrote this report, 1968 in the Gematria, which, by the way, 1966 is when they broke the ground for the World Trade Center. 1968 is when they built the first tower. Let's go to the next final slide, see if all this is a coincidence. Project for the New American Century, PNAC, is a neoconservative think tank, and the quote says, the men who created and nurtured the imperial dreams of PNAC became the men who run the Pentagon, the Defense Department, and the White House. So when you put in Project for the New American Century neoconservative think tank, you get 666. And then you get this 5285, which is the word hopopneo. Neo. You see the word neo, like neoconservative? Can you go ahead and flip the numbers, the other letters? The DOD is Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and NY is New York. Both places that got hit on 9/11. And I guess the Pope, you know, there's a memorial sticker down here. Doesn't that look like the Pope's hat? It's supposed to be the Pentagon, but that's the Pope's hat. Look at it. Papal Mitre 666. Wow, what a coincidence, right? House of Yahweh, you think 2020 was interesting? You ain't seen nothing yet. We're not halfway done, okay? If you'd all please stand, it's been a great honor. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to one of Yahweh's great priests, back over to the great Kohan, Michael Hawkins.